Welcome into the Saints Insider Podcast. Today is Tuesday, July the 2nd. I'm Zach Ewing with Matthew Paris, Luke Johnson, and Jeff Duncan. The offseason continues as we speed toward Saints training camp, which is 22 days away. Three weeks from now, y'all be arriving in LA. The next day, they'll start training camp.
21 days, yeah. Three weeks from today.
So we're speeding toward it. Got another offseason topic for you today. We are going to talk potential Saints breakout candidates. So the Saints who may kind of force their way on to, we'll define it maybe as like force their way into more of a national consciousness where people may understand who these guys are more than just names in draft classes and younger guys who can actually contribute to the Saints in 2024. So we'll do that right after this break.
Football fans, with the Caesars Sportsbook app, you can be in the game all the time. Seeking instant action? Quick Picks offers you the most popular games and markets, already built for you and ready to bet. Experience the thrill when you stack your bets to create a super parlay. Build bets for your favorite teams and players across multiple games. This season, don't just watch the game. Download Caesars Sportsbook and experience the game like never before.
And you're listening to the Saints Insider Podcast for Tuesday, July the 2nd. Encourage you to hit the like button, 5-star review, whatever format you're listening on. We appreciate that. And subscribe to our Saints on NOLA.com YouTube channel. We asked a couple weeks ago to get to 16,000 before training camp. We're already there, guys. So thank you to everybody who subscribed. Let's go for like 16,500. I don't know. Let's keep going.
Let's go for 20 by camp.
20 by camp.
Damn. I love it, Jeff.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's aim high.
Aim for the
You're going to buy the
stars.
bot farms? Or
I'll make that my Christmas wish. We'll get to 20K by Christmas. Fun show today, I think, guys. Most likely Saints to break out. And this is a story that, Luke, you wrote that'll be out on the website, I think, next week. So we're giving you a little sneak preview to it. But kind of define how you, or tell us how you defined breakout candidate for this.
Yeah, so I think it's different from player to player. For some of them, they have already at least announced themselves. One of the guys on here made an All-Pro team last year as a kick returner. But I think I was looking for players who were going to take the next step in their careers. For some of them, it's going to be next step into being a role player, a starting player, and for some of them, I think they have a chance to really establish themselves as name players in the NFL. So, I don't think this breakout player term can necessarily be uniform kind of across the board. I think it means something different for every player, and that's kind of what we're going to get into today.
Yeah, look at a guy like Carl Granderson. He played for a few years. Then last year he kind of broke out.
Yep.
I would define him as a breakout candidate from a year ago.
And he got paid for it.
Yeah, exactly. But he'd been there. People knew about him, but now he's like a different level, like Luke's saying.
That's a good example, I think, of what we're talking about. And Matt, one thing we didn't include, I don't know that we necessarily made them ineligible. We didn't name any rookies to this list, and I think that's kind of, it's hard to say a rookie breaks out because what did he break out from? Maybe he's just a fantastic player from the beginning. So we all are going to talk about the rookies at the end, but they're not necessarily who we're talking about.
right, like rookies aren't eligible for most improved player of the year, even though technically speaking they might be most improved. But yeah, like they're of their rookie class, they're like interesting. If Talise Fuanga is as good as the Saints hope, then he would be a breakout left tackle because he hasn't really played left tackle before. And then there are other guys on there, but it just feels way too soon. And truthfully, I mean, we don't really know. We don't know with any of these guys, but it's really harder to project rookies than maybe what we've seen from some of these other people.
Yeah, like I was considering putting Kool-Aid McKinstry on there, but A, we haven't seen him take a single competitive snap in practice. And B, we don't really know what position he's going to play or what kind of role he's going to play on this team. We all assume that he's going to play some kind of role within this defense. Is it going to be outside? Is it going to be inside? Is he going to be a dime corner? Is he going to maybe beat out Alontae Taylor for the nickel? I mean, like, I don't know. So it's really hard to Talise Fuanga. You can envision as a starting left tackle because that's where he is, and everybody else in this draft class, I think, is a little bit of a mystery. Some of them might not make the team. Some of them might not have a role. Some of them might be like the Nick Saldivari last year, where he played 18 snaps his entire rookie season, but he was on the roster the whole time. So, yeah, I think it's like with this sort of exercise, it's just without any sort of like real true idea of what they are yet. It's hard to say like, yes, they are going to break out and be a star.
Yeah, Tali Fuanga could start all 17 games at left tackle and take every snap, and that would be a fantastic debut. But that's not really breaking out. That's just coming onto the scene as already a solid player in this league.
Right. Yeah. I mean, like you can think about like rookie tackles who broke out. You know, I think of Tristan Wirfs or Rashawn Slater. You know, in their rookie seasons, like they came in and not only were they starting every game, but it was like, whoa, they're really, really good. Like they might be like Pro Bowl caliber already. That would be awesome for the Saints. But I just think it's, you know, there's no reference point yet to base this on.
Like if Caleb Williams is a Pro Bowler, is that a breakout, or is that just that's who he was the whole time and he just wasn't in the league yet? I don't know. I mean, you're splitting hairs, but that's what we did here. We didn't include the rookies. So this is kind of Luke's list, but we also had Matt and Jeff add to it as they saw fit, and then we will talk a little more about the rookies at the end. But we're going to start with a guy who was drafted in last year's class. There's a lot of guys from that 2023 draft class on this list, and he was hurt part of the year, he disappointed part of the year, but he also flashed some real potential, and that's Kendre Miller.
Yeah, I really think that Kendre Miller has a chance to be known by a lot of people by the end of this year. Specifically because people love their running backs in fantasy football. And, you know, I think people are going to be paying a lot of attention to him in training camp to see, like, what sort of role he might have within this offense. Because as we've discussed, like, ad nauseum, this offensive scheme really helps running backs. And, I mean, look at where it's been throughout the league. All the running backs have really big years in this scheme. Now, as Matt has pointed out before, not always in the first year of this scheme, but I still think that when you're looking at this group of running backs, you know, he's kind of buried a little bit behind Alvin Kamara and Jamal Williams, but like, I don't think there's anybody quite like him in terms of big play ability. I think he can give you dynamic ability both as a runner and as a pass catcher. And if he's able to crack the rotation and get some steady work, I think he could benefit and put together a really nice season. We didn't get to see it last year. You know, he missed, I think it was 9 games last year, maybe 10.
Something like that. Yeah.
And even when he played, he wasn't.
Even when he played, he was, you know, like every other running back on this team last year, it was not great. But in that last week, he averaged 5.5 yards a carry, ripped off a couple long runs, scored a touchdown, looked really good. Looked like the player we were all kind of expecting all year. So I'm just really anticipating a big second-year jump for him, as long as the coaching staff trusts him to do his job, which is, I think, always going to be a big part of this that we don't necessarily understand from the outside.
Yeah, look, I think the circumstances are there for him too, right? We don't know what's going to happen with Alvin Kamara. He's getting up there in age. Jamal Williams is up in age. They need Kendre Miller to kind of come through. So I think the opportunity is there for him to break out. And we see it happen all the time around the league. These young running backs kind of get a redshirt year. Kyron Williams, you know, was on the Rams, and all of a sudden he breaks out. Rashad White, same thing. So I think he's the number one candidate for all those reasons Luke mentioned too.
And I think she's also number one because we've talked a lot about on the show in the past of him maybe leapfrogging Jamal Williams to be that backup. I think there's a certain situation or certain reality where he could become the number one running back if things unfold that way. Like if Kamara gets hurt or doesn't, you know, misses most of training camp, and Kendre Miller's so good that they say, okay, we need to use more of this guy. Like he has that explosive factor that I think is really intriguing to coaches, and you know, they need to find out what they have there, and if they find out that he can be relied upon and can stay healthy, then they're going to try and use him as much as you can. So I do think there's a lot of upside there.
I'll give you an example. It happens in this league, and I'm going way back now, guys, before your time here, but
Oh boy.
the Saints drafted Deuce McAllister a couple years after they went all in on Ricky Williams, right? They had Ricky Williams, Heisman Trophy winner, superstar, and Ricky was out for a game in Deuce's rookie year. Deuce was not playing at all. I think he was on kickoff returns and got a carry every once in a while, but he was out for a game against Atlanta, and Deuce took one like 55 yards, showed kind of what you're talking about, the explosive big play ability. Ricky Williams traded the next offseason. So it happens. And it could happen to Alvin Kamara, especially with this contract situation and his age. If Kendre Miller does get some kind of opportunity and shines, we see it happen around the league all the time.
Well, and one other thing I want to bring up is when Alvin Kamara has been at his best in his career, and granted this was when he was 22, 23, 24 years old, it is when he was sharing carries.
Mm-hmm.
When they had the legitimate 1-2 punch with him and Mark Ingram, when they weren't relying on Alvin Kamara to just be this bell cow back, which I don't think anybody really truly believes he is.
Right.
When Alvin's getting maybe 10 to 13 carries a game and getting 5 catches a game, 6 catches a game, I think he's much more valuable as that versus somebody who's getting 22, 25 carries a game and taking the physical beating that position ends up giving guys. So I could absolutely see a world where they try to like turn back the clock a little bit and let Kendre Miller play the Mark Ingram role. Be like, hey, you're going to get 15 carries a game, 16 carries a game, and you're going to be the guy who's going to be softening up the defense, and Alvin's going to be the guy who's taking advantage of it.
What's interesting about that, though, is I kind of think he should play the Kamara role. Like, Kamara should be the running back, and Miller be the change of pace and be the explosive one.
The only reason I would counter that is that I think Miller is built a little bit more solidly than and Alvin's bigger than you think he is.
Yeah.
He's not like a scat back, but I think Miller's got the frame to handle more of a workload, and Alvin has always been better when it's a little bit less and he's not taking the big beating.
And I think Taysom figures into that too.
Yeah.
So now you got 3 guys. That's why I keep saying, like, Clint Kubiak, I think, is going to build this around the backs, because if they really privately like Kendre Miller, which I think they do, it makes sense, to go in that direction.
I want to hear Matt's argument, though. I cut him off.
No, touched upon it. I think in the screen game is really where Kendre Miller can shine, and that's a lot where they've used Kamara in the past, and I just think they can get him more involved in the passing game, and I feel like that's where he has a chance to be a little bit more explosive. But it just depends on what Alvin Kamara has left. We don't really know, at this age and his declining stats and how he'll perform in 2024.
Yeah, one thing is for sure, Kendre Miller is the only guy in that running back room who's kind of on the ascent in his career. He could break out, right? He's also younger, by the way, than like half the rookie class. He came on as a 20-year-old. He's very young still. Now, he's got to stay healthy. Like, I think back to last season, he wasn't able to play when Alvin Kamara was suspended early in the year because of injury, and so you had Tony Jones scoring 2 touchdowns in Carolina. Well, how much different does Kendre Miller's season look if he's the one who is the featured back in that game and has to be and kind of he might have broken out last year. So I think it's very possible he could be the guy if he stays healthy. So good discussion on Kendre Miller. Moving on to a guy you kind of teased, Luke, who was a Pro Bowler last year as a return man. Now the question is, can he break out, as we're saying, and become really what this team needs, and that's a true number 2 receiver, Rashid Shaheed.
Yeah, look, I've said it before on the show, I'll say it again. I really believe in Rashid Shaheed. I think he can be a really, really good receiver in the NFL. He's already proven it as a return man, and I think he's going to get more opportunities this year to actually show what he can do as a kick returner, because his stats as a kick returner have been fine. Really all of his damage has been as a punt returner at the NFL level. But the new rules should loosen some things up for him and maybe create some big play opportunities for him there. But what I really want to see is see him take a step forward as a receiver, as somebody who's not really just like their vertical threat downfield, and to be a true number 2. Like, work him in more in those short and intermediate routes. Like, let's see if the scheme opens up some run after the catch ability for him. I think last year he only averaged like 3.3 yards after catch. Like the vast majority, and he averaged 16 yards of reception. So the vast majority of his receiving yards were through the air. He can do that still.
But you need that.
And you need that. But if you can add the element where he's taking some of these short passes and going the distance with them, I think he can be a 1,000-yard receiver. I think they could have 2 1,000-yard receivers if things go right. But we need to see it like on a higher volume basis. there were games where he was like really spectacular last year. There were also a lot of games where it was like 3 targets, 2 catches, 15 yards. So let's see if like last year he had 75 targets, let's see him get 100, 110. That's like number 2 wideout numbers. And if you can get that and kind of maintain this pace he's on with like, his catch percentage, I think it was like 63% last year, is pretty solid. His yards per catch might go down a little bit, but his usage rate will go up. And I think the more opportunities he has, the more chance we're going to see him do some special things with the ball in his hands. So I think his reputation can really change this year from being like the big play threat who's a good returner to being like a true balanced number 2 wideout. And it's not like a huge season. But it's more than what he's done so far.
Yeah, if Rashid Shaheed breaks out after what he's already done, Matt, you've got a pretty good player there.
Yeah, we talked. We did an over and unders pod, and we talked about his number. What do you remember the number off the top of your head?
700.
Yes, it's right at 700.
Yeah, he finished with 719.
Yeah.
Last year, and when we were doing that pod, I don't think I had maybe realized that he had got to that. Like, that's a better number than I thought. And so, if we're talking about him as a breakout, I think that 1,000 yard would solidify breakout status for me. If he finishes with 750, I don't think we're really saying that at the end of the year. He's going to really have to take that step forward, as Luke mentioned. And I think the encouraging thing, if you're looking at this, is we've seen him run a ton of different routes, in OTAs and mandatory minicamp. It feels like he's used more as an intermediate type of receiver right now. They don't really air it out in practice all the time anyway. But I think the pushback I would maybe give is I think defenses will probably be a little bit more aware of what he can do, and so they'll take away some of those deep shots. The change in system, how much are they actually airing it down the field? Because as criticized as Pete Carmichael was last year, the Saints did air it out. I think they were near the lead. They almost led the league, or did lead the league in deep shots. So it's something that I think his role could change depending on it, and it might not be for the better.
Well, look, I think you make a good point about the different routes, because I think that's the natural progression for young receivers to keep expanding that route tree for a long time. He was kind of the go route guy, and then maybe some of the little underneath stuff. But that's where the scheme, I think, can help a lot. Is he's not a very big guy. So defenses are going to want to reroute him, get their hands on him, get physical with him. Same thing with Olave. But that's what the scheme can do, free him up with motion, use a lot of bunch formations, things to keep him clean, because that's how he's going to get challenged in this league. He's slight build. He's just not very big. And that's why he probably doesn't have a lot of yards after catch, because once guys do get their hands on him, he's not going to really break a lot of tackles. The key is getting their hands on him because he's so fast. So I think if he just makes the normal progression from year 2 to 3 that he made from 1 to 2, that's all the Saints would. I think the Saints would be happy with that, because I think he'll be a number 2 receiver if he does that.
And I think that one of the things that we're hoping to see out of this offense is creating space for the playmakers. So I don't necessarily think he'd even need to get better at breaking tackles. He just needs to get the ball in space where he can use his speed to his advantage. And we've seen that before. I mean, his very first touch was a jet sweep that he took like 40 yards to the house. So he can navigate space with his speed if it's there. We just
show that on returns.
Yeah, exactly. So we just got to see if this offense can do what it's promising to do and get these guys in space and let them do something with the ball in their hands.
Yeah, use the middle of the field, get that run after catch. And then, as you mentioned, Luke, the other aspect of this is with the new kick return rules, he could break out as a returner and really become a difference maker.
He could be a star this year.
Yep.
I think he had like 15 kick returns last year. If that number goes up to like 50, 60, which we're going to be seeing that, right? Like, he could score 2-3 touchdowns on kick returns this year. He's special. So we could see him take a leap in pretty much every facet of his game, and it could make him a really like a household name. I don't think he's ever going to be like a true number 1 receiver, and that's okay. But he can impact the game in a number of different ways, and I think that could make him a really big time player for this team.
And I think it'll be interesting to see if, in fact, they can use those guys over the middle. I mean, there is a reality to their frames, Olave and Rashid. I mean, neither one of them is very big. I mean, people make their living, like Mike Thomas, making those tough catches for a reason. It's hard. A lot of guys don't want to do it.
Yeah.
I remember Devery Henderson. Go back and watch a Saints game. Devery Henderson never went over the middle, ever. Like, he didn't like doing it. They weren't going to make him do stuff that wasn't what he was good at. So, like, it'll be interesting to see how they develop that, because you have to do it to some degree, and I don't know if they have that guy now with Mike T.
It's a topic for another day, but that's why we talk about they need somebody to play that role.
Yeah, well, it'll be interesting to see if Derek Carr can improve throwing over the middle of the field too. That was definitely a weak spot for him last year.
Yeah. So Rashid Shaheed, maybe a quasi breakout last year. If he could do it again, he could really break out into a star if he could take that leap again. So he's number 2 on our list. These aren't in any particular order, but he's the second guy we talked about. Third one, switching gears and moving to the offensive line. Another guy you mentioned, Luke, but Matt, you've written a lot about the offensive line. Nick Saldivari can turn into a starter at left guard. That qualifies as a breakout, and that qualifies as a huge win for what this offense needs.
It is, and it's really what you want from a roster construction standpoint, is to take a guy in the 4th round, let him develop, and then when your starter at left guard unexpectedly retires, like, there's someone on the roster already, so you don't have to go out in free agency and spend $5 million to get a starting left guard. You kind of have that guy on the roster, and I think the encouraging thing we've seen from Nick Saldivari this offseason is he's reworked his body. He's talked a lot about that. He seems really kind of prepared for this moment. And, I think they have a lot of confidence in him right now. He's overcoming an injury, so he wasn't right there at the beginning of OTAs, wasn't right in the mix. But since he's been back and since he's been in team drills, it's pretty much been his spot to lose. And I think they've been encouraged with what they've seen.
Guys, I was struck looking at photos actually to make this graphic on screen right now and searching his name in our database and AP Wire and things like that. See a photo of Nick Saldivari at Old Dominion. He was a big dude. He really has leaned up quite a bit. I don't think that's the right. Slimmed up. He looks like a lean.
Come on, man, you got
Slim
it.
and trim. They have
He's slimmed up.
They need a new sponsor.
And I mean, but that's to Matt's point, is that's what they want in this offense, these guards to be able to get on the move and get out to that second level.
Yeah, I think that's why he did it, right? And I think this is a natural progression for him as well to step in the lineup. It's happened a number of times that I can think of in covering the Saints. Jermon Bushrod, Teron Armstead, these young guys that come in, kind of learn, and then they see what the game's all about, and they step into a starting role.
Streif.
Streif's a great example. I don't have any reservations with it. I mean, we don't know how good he's going to be, but I don't think Nick Saldivari. I mean, every team in the league, if you look around, people don't have 5, first-round draft picks starting on the offensive line. Everybody's got a player or two. Just from a roster construction standpoint, you kind of have to have a Nick Saldivari come through and start for you. We'll see what happens when he plays, but I think there's a reason they've got him out there. They've got confidence in him.
Yeah, I agree. I think training camp is going to be really telling where he is, because obviously they haven't done any sort of live contact or anything like that yet. But look, if he's able to hold that down, I mean, you've got him under very, very team-friendly contract for the next 3 years. And this is something that we've talked about a lot with the Saints team, is it's just with the position they're in with the salary cap. Like, they can't afford to, have these guys on the roster that they take with mid-round picks hoping to develop into a starter, and then when they get the opportunity to go, like, we're going to go sign another James Hurst or Nick Easton or Larry Warford or, whatever, go down the list of all these guys they've signed in the past to just kind of be spot starters for them because they're veterans and they know what they're capable of. If you have the ability to throw Nick Saldivari out there for the next 3 years where he's making like $1 million a year, that is a huge thing for a team that is in like constant salary cap trouble.
And you think about it, they're going to have to pay Chris Olave for sure. That's going to be a massive deal. And then if Shaheed's coming up on a new deal.
Shaheed's going to be a restricted free agent next year.
Yeah, so I mean, just long term, you're exactly right. They've got to have guys like Nick Saldivari come through, because they're going to be paying big-time contract, at least for sure, to Olave. We've seen what receivers are getting now, thanks to Justin Jefferson. Relatively speaking, he's going to get paid.
Olave is going to be probably like a $30 million player when he comes up for a contract. Even if he's not like top of the market, resetting the everything, $30 million is probably the minimum of what they're going to have to pay.
30's the new 20. A few years ago, it was $20 million was the baseline for receivers, and since then it's just.
And you're paying Carr at least through 25, right?
Yeah, I think Olave they have under control 22, 23, 24, 25. They'll have under control through 26, because certainly they'll use the fifth-year option on him.
Right.
But even that fifth-year option at 26 is going to be pricey.
And at that point, he's going to start to want a new contract, and so then you start to get into, okay, do we keep him happy and pay him? And again, another topic, but Saints need to get cheaper, and certainly having a stalwart on your offensive line who you drafted in the 4th round, if Nick Saldivari can break out into that, very helpful.
If he can be a quality, dependable starter, huge for this team.
Don't need him to be a star. Just break out and become a starter. You may be sensing a theme here as we continue with our Saints breakout players for 2024 here on the Saints Insider Podcast. If you like the show, subscribe to the channel and hit the like button for us. Leave a comment. Tell us who you think your breakout player is, who maybe we didn't mention. But our theme here is, obviously it's breakout players, but what's going on is we're naming a lot of guys from this 2023 draft class. And here's another one. And we flip over to the other side of the line, and another guy we didn't see very much of last year for various reasons. And he was a 2nd-round pick, Luke. Like, the Saints expect him to be a good player in this league, and that's Isaiah Foskey.
Yeah. Look, I think it was very telling last year that they were a team that really struggled to get after the quarterback, and their 2nd-round pick played 83 snaps. Right? They needed help, and they got none from Isaiah Foskey. I put him on this list because everybody's been saying the right things about him this offseason. And I think we've seen a little bit of it during the OTAs and the minicamp, a little bit of it to be encouraged. And then, when you look back at, he was a very productive pass rusher at a big school in Notre Dame. He had 11 sacks each of his last 2 seasons. If they can unlock even a little bit of that to where he is part of the rotation, where he's getting 4 or 5 sacks as like a rotational pass rusher, I think that qualifies to me as a breakout, because it means he is not a bust. It means he is somebody who you spend a lot of money on, or a lot of draft capital on. I think number 41 overall pick, if I remember correctly, who is contributing at a key position. I think that to me qualifies as a breakout. I don't think I expect him to get double-digit sacks, as maybe Isaiah Foskey might argue with me on that. But if he's, kind of like Nick Saldivari, if he's like a guy who's part of the rotation, who's playing consistent snaps week in, week out, and able to contribute some as a pass rusher. He had 50 pass rush snaps last year, according to PFF. 3 hurries, and that's it.
Got to be better.
Got to be a lot better. They're saying they're encouraged by it, but let's see it. So he's my breakout candidate, who's maybe I'm least confident in, but.
Yeah, I don't know if I would feel very confident about it, just because I think for him to actually see meaningful playing time, at least even in a rotation sense, Chase Young would probably have to get hurt, or someone at, Carl Granderson. I just don't think there's going to be a lot of room for him on the field right now. And it was also kind of weird last year. He talked a lot about, a few months ago, about just kind of not being ready for the NFL. But he did appear in 10 games. Now, some of those games he got hurt, but I think I looked this up. He played 83 snaps, but he appeared in 10 games. It was like it was the fewest amount of snaps of. Okay, so I looked up, trying to remember the stat.
I get where you're going.
It's of defensive linemen taken in the 1st and 2nd round. He played 83 snaps, which was the fewest amount to at least play 1 snap. So it was like him.
Taking out guys who were hurt all year, basically.
Guys who were hurt all year, or just didn't see the field at all because they didn't show on StatHead. I wish they would, but whatever. we can take it up with Pro Football Reference. It was him, Robert Mdiche, the former Cardinals lineman, Jacksonville Jaguars. Yeah, he was the bust in the NFL. And then, if you want to ring the bell, Fidarian Mathis for Washington. He played one snap before he got hurt.
Got one.
So, yeah, it's not great company.
Yeah, and I think Foskey is in danger of that B word becoming a bust if we don't see something this year, Jeff. Now, I think the promising thing would be, like Dennis Allen had the quote now, the notable quote in OTA saying, we just want him to let loose and kind of be him. And that means they see the natural talent there. So it's not a talent issue. It's not like with Trevor Penning, you worry about, like, does he even have it at all? I think they think Foskey has it. He's just got to unlock it.
Well, I would say this. I mean, Foskey was a little bit of a polarizing prospect coming out of Notre Dame. There were a lot of teams that didn't like him because of some of the things we saw last year. He's kind of stiff. You know, he doesn't have a lot of bend for a guy that's not really that big. Yeah, you know, he struggles sometimes against certain tackles, and I think we saw some of that. So I think the key is, can he take that next step? I mean, it happens. You know, Granderson took a while to develop, and then he kind of came along. I always bring up Cam Jordan, but you just saw a little more, I think, from those guys. You could see the potential in Cam Jordan as a rookie, even though he only had one sack. So I think there's, I hate to use this meteorological term, there's a wide cone of uncertainty with him. I mean, I think
that a lot recently.
He could break out and have this big year, or he could go the other way. But I do think it's a critical year for him. I think he has to show something because they're kind of made a lot of investment at that position.
But let's just play this out from a number standpoint. So you have to keep 7 guys inactive on game days. They have roughly 5 defensive ends in the mix right now between Jordan, Chase Young, Granderson, Peyton Turner, and Isaiah Foskey. Which one of those guys is inactive? Because you're not keeping 5 up.
The one who's hurt. I mean, just being real here,
Yeah.
they've had a lot of injuries.
But assuming they're all healthy.
Assuming they're all healthy, I mean, you know, assuming they're all healthy, Isaiah Foskey's probably the odd man out.
Okay.
Right. But like, I mean, Peyton Turner's played like 12 games his NFL career. He's entering the last year of his rookie contract. Chase Young's been hurt. Cam Jordan's been hurt the last couple of years. I mean, there's always going to be attrition. I think if he stays healthy, he will find a way to be a part of the rotation. But then again, like, I mean, your point stands. Like, if they all stay healthy, which is good for the Saints, it'd be good to see what Peyton Turner can finally do. You know, I think he's probably number 5 on the list right now.
Yeah.
And if that's the case, the breakout has to start in the preseason and in camp. He's got to show something to show that he deserves to be up there.
Well, and like, you know, the other person I considered for that was Peyton Turner, but it's hard to say, like, yeah, breakout candidate when he just frankly hasn't.
Don't say the word break
healthy.
around Peyton Turner.
That's not nice, man. That's not nice. I mean, like, some of it has just been free stuff, like the turf toe. Like, you can't do anything about that. That's not. You know, to deal with like him being like weak or broken or whatever. Turf toe is a freak injury every time. But you know, it cost him basically his entire season last year. So, you know, he has got to stay on the field, and it's impossible at this point. He hasn't done it through 3 NFL seasons, so it's hard to say, like, yeah, if he stays on the field, maybe he's a breakout candidate because he hasn't done it yet.
All right, moving on to our next breakout candidate for the Saints in 2024. And this one's another one kind of like Shaheed, that he already kind of quasi broke out. If he takes another step, all of a sudden you're talking about a Pro Bowl candidate, and it's Alontae Taylor. Like,
yeah, I mean, Pro Bowl I think would probably be pretty high for me, like for what he's capable. I think Alontae can be a really, really good player in the NFL, but he's got to take like a big leap in the position they're asking him to play. And I think that's why I put him in this list, is because he's done some really, really nice things as an NFL player. But yeah, I think even though his numbers were better in year 2 in terms of like interceptions and all that stuff, I think he played much better as an outside corner because that's what he's natural at versus what he did last year as an inside corner. But he had all the experience last year, good and bad, that's in his pocket. And then he went into this offseason knowing he was trained to be a slot corner versus last year when he went through all of training camp competing for the outside cornerback job. And then they're like, hey, we're cutting Bradley Roby, you're going to be our slot corner. And you're just going to adjust on the fly. That's really hard to do. I mean, slot might be the most difficult position to play on an NFL defense. So I think he's got the intangibles to get better there. I think he's got the physical traits to be really good there. We just need to see him take the step. And I think if he can be like the level he was as an outside corner as a rookie, now in the slot, that is huge for the Saints defense. It makes him probably, arguably the best secondary in the NFL, the best corner group at least. I think the ceiling is pretty high for him there.
And I think, once again, people are going to challenge him. We know that.
They will.
Got challenged a year ago. You're not going to challenge Lattimore or Adebo probably. So he's going to have a lot of opportunity. But one thing I'd say about him, he is a fearless, confident dude. I like his mindset. He's got a little dog in him. He's always chirping at the other team. I like the way he plays. It's just he's being asked to play a position that he really wasn't trained to do out of college. And the transition's been a little rough, which we should all have expected at this level. But I think he has the physical traits to be an excellent player, like Luke said. It's all there for him. It's just a matter of putting it all together.
And he's flashed some highlights. I think back to his rookie year when he broke on that route and had the pick six against San Francisco. It got called back because of a penalty on the other side of the field. But last year he came on a corner blitz and had a big sack. And it was like a freight train coming into the backfield. The guy's got a lot of talent and a lot of potential to pop.
And I think the Saints are showing a good amount of confidence in him or faith. Even though he got benched multiple times last year, he responded to those benchings with pretty good performances right after. But the guys that they brought in to challenge him at that spot were, all right, maybe Kool-Aid McKinstry, who we haven't seen do it yet because he's been hurt, but also he hasn't really played slot before. The other guys that they brought in, Will Harris, is more of a safety. He can play on the inside, but again, more of a safety rather than a slot cornerback. And then they re-signed Ugo Amadi, who replaced Taylor when he was benched, but still more of a guy that is a backup. They didn't really bring in a serious threat for him, and I think that says that they feel comfortable about him at his spot.
He's 25 years old. He's got 2 years left on his rookie deal. If he can figure it out this year, he could be in line to make himself a lot of money when he's up for a contract extension.
Yeah. All right, final guy on our list of potential breakout candidates for 2024, going back to that 2023 draft class and their first-round pick. It's Brian Bresee. Jeff, I know this is a guy you've at times really been impressed with. In preseason, he had some pop plays, and as the season went on, he kind of grew into it. And I think such a tough position to play as a rookie showed that it's in there.
Yeah, no doubt about it. He can rush the passer. That's why he was drafted in the first round. They need interior playmaking ability. That's what he brings. Really no one else in that group that has that kind of potential that he has. For him to take the next step, he's got to become a better run defender. That was the knock on him coming out of Clemson. He's built almost like a defensive end. He's almost like
a 3-4 defensive end.
Yeah, he's like a 6'5" defensive tackle. That's difficult to gain leverage inside. Every once in a while you'll see it. Especially if he plays too many snaps, fatigue sets in and he just gets bulldozed out of there because he loses leverage. And I know that's something he's worked on, but man, he's got just the physical athletic ability. It's rare at that position, and I think he's learning. Some of the things he brought to the table with his spin moves, some of the athleticism you see, very rare do you see that in a young cat like him. So I think the potential's off the charts for him, but he's got to do it. And, there's going to have a year of tape from the opponents now on him. So we'll see. That's always the key with all these guys. How much do they want it? How much does it mean to them? Now they know what it's like, right? They know what to expect. Can they take that next step? We saw Chris Olave do it. Can some of these other guys do it?
He is the one out of anybody on this list who, if you were going to go, who's going to make the Pro Bowl at their position? I would say Brian Bresee. I have the most faith in becoming a Pro Bowl player. He's got to get better against the run. And look, he didn't start a single game last year. I think he was third on the team in terms of defensive tackles and number of snaps played. But if he can improve as a run defender and get to the point where they're counting on him to be that guy, and where he could be like a true like 3-down defensive tackle, like I think you could see his pass rush numbers go way up. And he would have had 6.5 sacks last year as a defensive tackle, which is really, really hard to get, had it not been 2 of those being wiped away by penalties in the secondary. Right? I think 1 was wiped away by a penalty in the secondary, and 1 he like grazed a face mask on the sack. So, he's got so much ability there in like the premium type of defensive tackle play where you're getting sacks. Those guys are hard to find, and if he's able to bump that number up to like 7, 8, and he's playing like 60% of the snaps versus 45% of the snaps, I think you're talking about a true breakout player who could contend for a Pro Bowl.
And to that point, Matt, I think the expectation within the defensive tackle rotation is that he should supplant Nathan Shepard and really be no defensive tackle is going to play every snap, but play the second most, if not the most number of snaps at that position.
Yeah, I mean, I think he'll at least be a starter this year, which he wasn't last year, as Luke mentioned. I think the breakout, too, even if the pass rush numbers kind of stay where they were, I think there's still a huge opportunity for him to make a leap as a run defender. I think he has the tools to do it. I know he's a little bit bigger than maybe you would want from that, but there was nothing I saw last year that I was like, okay, this guy can't stop the run eventually. I just think it comes with time, experience. He's another guy I think that has changed his body a little bit. So getting used to the NFL and being better there, I think he's going to be a really solid player.
All right, so we named 6 potential breakout candidates. We have 3 along the line, Foskey, Bresee, and Saldivari. We have 2 skill players, Rashid Shaheed and Kendre Miller, and then we have Alontae Taylor at cornerback. What is a good hit rate for the Saints? What do they need out of these 6 guys? Clearly, you can't expect everybody to break out every time. What do you guys think? Is 50% reasonable? Is that enough for the Saints to improve?
I would want
they need
4
to
out of the 6.
4 out of the 6?
Yeah, I mean, if Foskey doesn't hit, if Kendre Miller doesn't supplant Jamal Williams, I think those are because your other guys are performing. But I think you need Rashid Shaheed to step up this year. I think you need Brian Bresee to take another step forward in year 2. And you need Alontae Taylor to play better in the slot. And I think, frankly, I think they need Nick Saldivari to hold down the starting left guard job and not turn it over to somebody like Oliudo. So, yeah, if I'm the Saints, I want 4 out of those 6 to hit at least, and hopefully it's the 4 I mentioned because I think Kendre Miller might have the best shot at becoming like a much better version than he was last year, maybe outside of Saldivari, but you could understand if Jamal Williams is a much better version of the player he was last year, if Alvin Kamara is better and he's under contract, you could understand if Kendre Miller's like 3rd in the pecking order still.
Yeah, I think it's a good point. It depends on which guys break out, right? And breakout is also a subjective term. I mean, what do you consider to be a breakout? But what would you say, Luke? I mean, obviously, they really need somebody to step up at left guard, clearly, whether it's Saldivari or somebody else. And then they probably need, a Bresee or a Foskey or somebody to take a step to it at the very minimum.
Yeah, I think in terms of when I think of would breakout, all right, we don't know, we didn't really know this guy, or he's taken a massive leap forward. I think they would be happy with 2. I think if 4 of them are solid, you probably need 4 of them to be solid to take a step forward. But in terms of an actual breakout, they've taken a leap, I think 2 is maybe a little more realistic number. I don't think you can expect 4 guys to be oh my God, look, they all had breakout seasons. If we did this exercise a year ago, predicting, or even looking back at last year's roster, who truly broke out for the Saints last year?
Carl
Granderson. Who else would you put on the list? Olave, maybe. But
I wouldn't even call Olave a breakout. No. Yeah.
So
no, I mean that's true. Last year was an incredibly disappointing year. Right. I think, and I think your point is correct. Is how are you defining breakout? Is it just being there on the field and playing the snaps? Is it truly taking this big leap as a player? I think is probably the right answer there.
Yeah.
But this is a team, and that's kind of the lead into the story is they have been the oldest roster in the NFL by snaps my snap weighted age 2 years in a row. All these guys that we've talked about are 25 or younger, with the exception of Shaheed, who turns 26 in August. You need these guys to play big roles and to take the next step in their career. You need them to develop if your organization is going to get anywhere close to where you think it can be.
Oh, I'd put Paulson Adebo on that list.
Yeah, I was just about to say Adebo would be the other guy.
And I would say
And the
this.
only reason I didn't put Adebo on there is because he's going in the next piece about contract years.
There you go.
I would just say, you talk to people around the team, even with the team, off the record, you hear a lot of optimism about this young group. I think last year's draft class and this year's, Dennis Allen in particular, I've heard, is enamored with these two draft classes. So if you have faith in that, which maybe not a lot of people do, but they're high on them. So we're going to find out if they step forward. But this group we're talking about, I think, is the key to Dennis Allen keeping his job, to this thing going the right way for the Saints. So they've got to get production out of these last two draft classes, that especially last year's and some of the guys that were in the class before that haven't really produced. I mean, it's time. You're either going to do it or you're not, and there's optimism in the building, at least, that they can do it.
Yeah, they need these breakouts. So let's spend a minute. We'll go back to the rookies, and we mentioned at the beginning, kind of hard. How do you define a breakout? Can a rookie break out if he wasn't even in the NFL last year? So let's spend just a minute on the rookie class as well. I mean, I think the obvious answer, if you ask who will contribute the most, is Fuanga. He's going to start at left tackle, for goodness sake. Yeah. So let's just put him to the side for a second and say, assuming he stays healthy, he'll be the biggest impact player. Is the second choice, Luke, just simply the second round pick, as you mentioned, Kool-Aid McKinstry?
Yeah, I think so.
I don't know who else. I mean,
I mean, like for Spencer Rattler or Bub Means or Jalen Ford or Josiah Aziram to see the field, and I mean, there's probably disasters happened.
Something went wrong.
I think there's a chance. There's definitely a chance all those guys make the roster this year, just like last year when the entire rookie class made the roster and only like a few of them really actually contributed. I think there's a chance that happens again this year. I think out of all of the guys, that it's the one that I haven't mentioned yet, I think has the best chance to actually be a contributing player on the team. That's Christian Boyd, their 6th round defensive tackle. The Saints were, weirdly enough, that like the advanced metrics really liked the Saints run defense last year somehow. I think they finished like 3rd in success rate and 4th in EPA run defense, which kind of blew my mind because every other thing that you look at was really bad. But when you look specifically at their defensive tackle play, Nathan Shepard was one of the 5 worst defenders in the NFL against the run. One spot worse than him was Brian Bresee. Colin Saunders was fine, but not great as a run defender. Christian Boyd specializes in that. He's a big guy. He's like 6'2", 320. And if he can make the jump from Northern Iowa to the NFL, which is not a given, he could play some big snaps, some important snaps as like a nose for this defense. Yeah, I think he would be the one outside of Kool-Aid McKinstry who I'd be like, yeah, I can see a spot for him making plays on this team.
And the other guy, Matt, that you brought up when we were talking about this show, not a draft pick, but Dallin Holker, the undrafted free agent tight end.
Yeah, if Juwan Johnson's injury is serious enough to where he has to miss time at the beginning of the season, maybe Holker carves out a lane. I don't think he's going to have a breakout in terms of like the others we've talked about on this list, but he can carve a nice role for himself. He's definitely not known league-wide of like, all right, who's that? So I do think there's something there, but I think Luke's point about the blocking from a few weeks ago is very very right in terms of maybe I shouldn't get overexcited about him. We have to see how he blocks, but he looks good in shells.
Yeah. Yeah, you could see like a little bit of the George Kittle and when he's catching passes and the number 85 and long hair, and then you're like, oh yeah, but George Kittle's like top 2 blocking tight end in the NFL. He's awesome. Holker's got a lot of room to grow there probably.
But you talk to Holker, he definitely knows that too. Like I like his mindset. He knows he's got a long way to go. Big crowd of reporters around him in the locker. He's not buying into the hype. I mean, he understands that it's going to be a huge learning curve for him. So I like that mindset. But he is basically like an extra draft pick. I think in the Saints' mind, they probably had him graded 5th round or something. That's why they threw the money at him, the guaranteed money. And if you look around the league, I mean, he was the #1 undrafted free agent tight end on everybody's board. So it makes sense to see him. And I agree with Luke on Boyd. Boyd's look good. And a lot of the stuff they're doing, even though it's, we're not going to really tell until they put the pads on. But there's an opportunity for him because of what is probably one of the biggest weaknesses on this team is interior run defense.
All right, we'll wrap things up with this. Of all the guys we've talked about today, who are you most confident in breaking out in 2024? Don't go at once.
I'm going to go Shaheed. I just have a lot of belief in him, and I could be just totally wrong on that. But I think all he needs is the usage to go up, and I fully expect his numbers to go up. I think he'll look. There's no Michael Thomas here anymore. There's nobody else really in this receiving core who I'm like, yeah, they're going to take a bunch of targets away. I mean, I think they're going to find a way to get Shaheed the ball and let him do some stuff. I think I'm most confident in him.
And the return game too, I think.
Yeah,
huge deal.
Yeah, he's already good there. The kick returns that'll be a big change. But I think I'm confident in him actually stepping forward as a #2.
Luke took Shaheed. Who you guys got?
I'll go Bresee just because I think there's a clear path to do it. Didn't start last year, clearly in line to be a starter, can build on the run defense, had that sack production to where maybe it takes a step forward. And he has the pedigree of a 1st-round pick. They're going to trust him to do it. I just think there's a lot there for him. I think it's the easiest path, even though breaking out in the NFL is not easy to do.
And defensive line's certainly a position where sometimes it takes a year for you to get up to speed. So
defensive tackle especially.
Yeah. Jeff, you got anybody else, or you agree with those two?
No, well, look, I like both those guys, but I'm going to go with Taylor just because I think he had a lot of reasons to struggle maybe in certain areas. He's got the physical traits. I like his mindset. And I think another year in the system at slot, there's a natural, I think, transition for him to improve. And I like the guy. I think yeah, he's going to get beat, but he's got that short-term memory that you have to have there. And I think he's going to make a lot of plays. I mean, one thing I do like about him is he's got playmaking skills there. And they need that in this secondary. I mean, we've talked about the numbers that could regress to the mean and the turnover ratio. I think they're going to have to produce a similar amount of takeaways this year if they want to take a step forward as a defense, because they're playing much better quarterback play and much better offenses.
All right, I think that's going to do it for the Saints Insider for Tuesday, July the 2nd. Take the rest of the week off for the holiday. Everybody have a happy 4th of July, and we'll be back with you next week. Thank you for watching. Hit the like button, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Really trying to grow that YouTube channel, and it's really the best place where you can get a lot of interaction and where we're really paying attention to the comments and stuff. So if you're watching on Facebook or X, head over to the YouTube page, saintsonnola.com, subscribe to it. Also post some short practice videos, even have some left over from minicamp I'm going to be posting throughout the next few weeks before we get to the good stuff in Irvine in 3 weeks. So for our producer, Norman Bell, he's Matthew Paris, Luke Johnson, and Jeff Duncan, I'm Zach Ewing. Thanks for watching the Saints Insider.